after thinking about this for a while, what the Methow means to me, it kind of dawned on me that throughout my time here, it that the meaning has changed forms. Um, and the reason I moved here is not the same reason I recently decided to buy a house and stay here. Those reasons are still in the background, but not the ones that are kind of in the forefront that keep me staying and digging into the community. So I thought that it would be appropriate to approach this in kind of a timeline of sorts, or the phases of my life here in the Methow. And of course, the first phase is probably the one that a lot of people have, where you first visit the Methow and your first experience with it and realizing how beautiful it was. So in November of 2011, I picked my parents up from the airport, Seattle, and drove over the North Cascades for the very first time. And that drive, doing it for the first time is just awe-inspiring. I mean, you could still do it now after doing it for countless times, and it's still awe-inspiring, but I still vividly remember just seeing the snow-covered, peaks and the spires, and then coming around the hairpin and down into the valley, and just thinking, wow, this place is pretty magnificent. And then me and my parents found ourselves holed up at the OSB for live music, and chatting with the locals, and just having such a heartwarming time. And at that time I had done a decent amount of traveling in the Pacific Northwest, and you can fall into little towns, and a lot of them, I remember kind of peripherally, but I just remember my first experience in the Methow Valley and in Winthrop so vividly that, looking back on it, like, that was definitely a sign that this place was going to be a big part of my life. So in August of 2016, I got the opportunity. I said yes to a teaching position. And so this enters the phase where I'm not just in the valley for its beauty. I mean, that's essentially what brought me here. Everybody falls in love with the Methow. Look at all of the outdoor adventures that you can go on, and all the sights you can see. But then I started to really fall in love with the community as a whole, and so these were my early years living here full time, and the Methow then to me meant diving in full steam ahead, saying yes to any opportunity I could. Early on, I didn't have a place to live, so I lived down Boulder Creek in my car and my tent, but still that was not going to deter me from making myself a part of this community and taking on everything it had to offer. I started coaching U6 soccer, which I don't know anything about soccer really. I got involved with high school track and field and the Methow Valley Killer Whales team. I started driving the Zamboni at the rink. I mean, where else can you do that? Just off the streets. Hey, you want to drive Zamboni? Sure, why not? Just sign me up. And started coaching hockey and playing hockey again after a 20-year hiatus, and getting involved in these volunteer opportunities at the Merck and with Classroom in Bloom and the Conservancy, and places that where I met people that I normally wouldn't in my, my full-time job at the school. And I just realized how incredibly amazing and diverse this community for such a small community is. And so it's a really easy place to say yes to all of the opportunities that it offers. So that was very much my say yes, take it all in, do everything time. This is what the Methow is. It's opportunity. It's a place where you can just on a whim meet your friends and grab a drink and a pizza at East 20, and then walk across the street and take yourself on a date at the Barnyard Cinema, and you're gonna wave to everybody on this, as you're driving through town. It was just such a period of growth, and then of course fast forward to 2020, when we all fell into the time where COVID hits and we're all going inward. And at that time, kind of the Methow transitioned back in this way to, you feel less of a community sense because we're all hunkered down and you are more or less secluded, to where I was remembering that beauty that brought me here in the first place. Like how lucky I was that I could, after sitting on Zoom meetings or Zoom classroom chats with my students, I could go out and go for a walk in the fresh air, and sit around a fire socially distanced with my friends. And so that beauty kind of like came flooding back, as we had to kind of push community aside. But partway through 2020, I had that full inundation of community come back to me, as there was a little bit of a bigger C word than COVID that came into my life. So in July of 2020, after struggling with some severe back pain, I had an MRI that led to some relatively grim findings. And I remember sitting on the banks I was in Montana right after my MRI, and doctor called and gave me the news that you need to come back for a CT scan. And through my connections in the Methow, I had these amazing friends, one of which didn't want me to have to drive home from Montana alone. So with the connections in this beautiful place, chartered a plane to Montana to get dropped off to drive me back to my impromptu CT scan. And of course, if anybody's been through any kind of medical thing, a couple weeks seems to be more like a couple years. And so it was a lot of waiting for scans and results from scans. And around that time, this beautiful community, the Methow, turned into this wonderful bubble of support that lifted me up and took care of me and distracted me while I waited for results and things. I had people would just drop by to go for a walk or put on tutus and go into the backcountry to make me, put my phone down for a while so I didn't just stare at it waiting for doctors to call me, or, hey, let's sit down and just have porch coffee, and that kind of support and distraction that you need in a time like that. And then it got a little deeper in August of 2022 when I was confirmed that I had stage 4 lymphoma. And of course, one of my dearest friends was there having porch coffee with me while I got that news. And I remember, of course, all the feelings that you get with that, but meeting with my oncologist for the first time and her asking me, hey, well, where's your family? And I said, upstate New York. And she's like, well, you can go do your treatment there if you'd like, And the first thing I thought was, no, I need to be in my place with my people. I need to be in the Methow. And that was very telling. I think about that often still when I think about this place. And it's like, this is where you, when you go through one of the hardest things in your life, to know that you want to be in a place with the people that support you is pretty telling, that you're in the right place. So yeah, now the Methow, of course, takes on this whole thing where you have to step back and be humble and be able to let in all the support that the people in this community want to give you. I mean, it's, there's a level of humble when you lose your eyebrows that you have to deal with. But the way that this community rallies around people who are struggling and are people who have experienced loss or some kind of hardship is beyond amazing, beyond anything I could ever imagine. I don't think I would have found support other places, but I don't think in that deep level like I have here. So that was very much a support time for me. And now being on the other side, being healthy, the phase I'm in now is I want to do everything I can to give back. The Methow to me means diving in even more and deeper and giving back to this beautiful community that has given so much to me and continues to give so much to me. There's just so much to get involved in. There's so many amazing, inspiring people, and I think everybody needs to take a moment to sit and think about what the Methow does mean to them, because it's given me a much greater appreciation to this place, greater than I knew I had a great appreciation, but it deepened that. So I'm very appreciative for this opportunity. Thank you.